This is one of the most iconic album covers in music history. Behind the Beatles are dozens of writers, actors, musicians, and famous figures from history. But most of these faces weren't chosen randomly. So who are they? And why are they here? Sri Yukteswar Giri is the Indian guru you can see in the very top left corner of the cover. And the main reason he's here is George Harrison. In 1966, Harrison became increasingly interested in Indian philosophy and spirituality through his relationship with Ravi Shankar. He was especially influenced by Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi. Sri Yukteswar was Yogananda's guru and an important figure in the Kriya Yoga tradition. So George didn't just choose Yogananda for the Sgt Pepper cover. Aleister Crowley was an English occultist, writer, and founder of the esoteric philosophy known as Thelema. Known for his interest in magic, mysticism, and the phrase, "do what thou wilt," he became one of the most controversial figures of his time. Crowley was suggested for the cover by John Lennon, who was drawn to unusual and provocative figures who challenged social norms. Mae West was one of Hollywood's most famous and controversial stars. An actress, writer, and comedian, she was known for her bold humor, outspoken attitude toward sexuality, and frequent battles with censorship. When the Beatles asked to include her on the Sgt Pepper cover, West initially refused, reportedly asking, "What would I be doing in a Lonely Hearts Club?" But after the band wrote her a personal letter, she changed her mind and allowed her image to be used. Lenny Bruce was one of the most controversial American comedians of his time. His stand-up openly tackled religion, politics, sex, and social taboos, which frequently brought him into conflict with censorship and the law. His boundary-pushing style fit perfectly with the countercultural spirit of the 1960s and is also considered an influence on John Lennon. So it's not surprising to see him among the rebellious and unconventional figures on the Sgt Pepper cover. Karlheinz Stockhausen was a German composer and a pioneer of electronic music. His experimental use of tape, electronic sounds, and unconventional composition especially influenced Paul McCartney. That interest also helped shape the Beatles' growing use of tape loops, sound effects, and studio experimentation. So Stockhausen was one of the figures on the cover who genuinely influenced their music. W.C. Fields was an American comedian, actor, and writer, and one of the most famous comic figures of the early 20th century. He was known for his sarcastic, grumpy persona and his habit of mocking authority and social conventions. The Sgt Pepper crowd was largely made up of cultural figures admired by the Beatles and the cover's creators, and Fields was included as one of those classic comedy icons. Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and the founder of analytical psychology. His ideas about the collective unconscious, archetypes, and individuation had a major influence on 20th century thought. The Sgt Pepper cover was filled with cultural figures admired or considered important by the Beatles and the designers, and Jung fit naturally among these unconventional thinkers. Given the band's growing interest in identity, consciousness, and Eastern philosophy at the time, his presence on the cover also feels especially fitting. Edgar Allan Poe was an American writer and poet best known for his dark, Gothic stories, and he became a major influence on the development of horror and detective fiction. He appeared on the Sgt Pepper cover as one of the cultural figures admired or considered significant by the Beatles. Poe's strange and darker style also fit well with John Lennon's interests. Interestingly, just a few months later, Lennon directly name-checked Poe in I Am the Walrus. Fred Astaire was one of the great stars of Hollywood's golden age, famous for his elegant dancing, acting, and classic movie musicals. He reportedly appeared on Paul McCartney's list of people for the Sgt Pepper cover. So his inclusion wasn't really about a direct influence on the Beatles' music, but rather Paul's admiration for the world of classic Hollywood entertainment. Astaire was also reportedly delighted to be included. Richard Merkin was an American painter and illustrator. Unlike many of the people on the cover, he wasn't widely famous in 1967. His inclusion was mainly due to his friendship with the cover's co-designer, Peter Blake. The Vargas girl isn't actually a specific person, but one of the famous pin-up illustrations associated with Peruvian-American artist Alberto Vargas. His glamorous, idealized women became especially popular through Esquire magazine in the 1940s and turned into icons of American popular culture. Huntz Hall was an American comedy actor best known for the Bowery Boys films of the 1940s and 50s, where he played the goofy Satch character. He was originally included alongside fellow Bowery boy Leo Gorcey. Gorcey was later removed after asking to be paid for the use of his image, while Hall remained on the cover. Simon Rodia was an Italian-born American laborer and self-taught artist, best known for building the Watts Towers in Los Angeles almost entirely by himself over roughly 33 years. His appearance on the Sgt Pepper cover came mainly from the cover's designer, Peter Blake. Blake greatly admired Rodia's outsider art and had even visited the Watts Towers in 1963. So Rodia was one of the art world figures Blake personally chose to add to the crowd. Bob Dylan was one of the most influential songwriters of the 1960s and had a direct impact on the Beatles. John Lennon, in particular, was strongly influenced by Dylan's more personal, poetic, and introspective approach to songwriting, which can be heard in songs like I'm a Loser and Norwegian Wood. So Dylan's place on the Sgt Pepper cover makes perfect sense. He wasn't just an important cultural figure of the era, but one of the contemporaries who genuinely helped shape the Beatles' musical development. Paramahansa Yogananda was an Indian guru and the author of the 1946 book, Autobiography of a Yogi, which became an important influence on George Harrison's growing interest in Indian philosophy and spirituality. Harrison suggested Yogananda for the Sgt Pepper cover, along with figures from his spiritual lineage, including Sri Yukteswar, Lahiri Mahasaya, and Mahavatar Babaji. So Yogananda's presence on the cover is one of the clearest reflections of George's spiritual awakening at the time. H.G. Wells was an English writer and one of the pioneers of science fiction, best known for works like The Time Machine, The War of the Worlds, and The Invisible Man. His stories explored unusual ideas about technology, the future, and society. There's no clearly documented explanation for why Wells was specifically chosen for the Sgt Pepper cover, but the collage was filled with writers, artists, and thinkers admired or considered culturally significant by the Beatles and the designers, and Wells fit naturally into that group. Karl Marx was a German philosopher, economist, and political thinker. Together with Friedrich Engels, he wrote the Communist Manifesto, and his ideas about capitalism, class conflict, and society had an enormous influence on modern political thought. The Sgt Pepper crowd was made up of historical and cultural figures considered important, interesting, or influential by the Beatles and the cover's creators, and Marx was included among these major thinkers.